Hi everyone, it's Miss Landis here, and in today's science video, we are working to complete lesson 1 on pages 471 to 476. We're completing questions 21, 22, 24, 25, and 26. And just to show you in our contingency plans, this is part 2, so this is actually like week 2, and lesson 1 will complete today, and then in the next video I will be working on the lesson check, which wraps up all of lesson 1. So in this video we're going to be reading through Exploration 3, Not What It Used to Be. It's pretty much all about rocks and how they've changed due to maybe erosion from water, pressure from heat, or even just cracking from an earthquake. So this is just all about how rocks can change over time. So I'm just going to be reading through the text and then explaining how to answer some of the questions. So Exploration 3 is called Not What It Used to Be. It's a Grand Canyon. The layers of rock that make up the Grand Canyon formed over millions and millions of years. So the Grand Canyon, I've never actually been there. Maybe some of you have, and that would be pretty awesome. The Grand Canyon was not formed overnight. It was formed over millions and millions of years. So it took a really long time for it to look the way that it does now. The story of the canyon. Look at these images of the Grand Canyon. And sadly, I've said in my other videos too, you're looking at a photocopied version of the text. So you don't really see like the beauty or the color that's in some of these images, but you can Google pictures of the Grand Canyon and see like all of the amazing photos of it. Dozens of rock layers can be seen in the Grand Canyon. The Colorado River flows through the Grand Canyon. So the way that the Grand Canyon was formed over time is the Colorado River slowly over millions and millions of years eroded away the rock. And what that means is the word eroded, or to erode, has to do with erosion. So to erode means to wear away. So if something is being eroded, it's being worn away. So over time, over millions and millions of years, the Colorado River flowing through the Grand Canyon kind of wore away all of that rock and carved a canyon into it. So we are not doing number 20, we're doing number 21. So I'm going to read the text here. Once the layers were in place, the mighty Colorado River began to carve through them to create the long, deep canyon we see today. So the river, when they say carve through them, it's carving through the rock layers. So it's kind of pushing those layers away and creating that deep canyon that we see. So in your own words, briefly explain how the Grand Canyon was formed. I think an important part of that is that it took place over millions and millions of years. So in my answer, I'm going to say over millions and millions of years. And we need a comma in there. The Colorado River eroded the rock layers. to create the canyon. And of course, you could have a different answer. Your answer could be worded in a slightly different way. I just think that it's important to note that it didn't take place overnight. The Grand Canyon was formed over a very large span of time. So that's why I included over millions and millions of years. All right, flipping to the next page. Slow and steady. Rivers are narrow bodies of water that flow over land. They can change the rocks beneath them by carving canyons. Look at the images and read the captions to find out how. The word narrow might be a word that you're unfamiliar with. Narrow means like very skinny. So whereas lakes are large bodies of water, oceans are large bodies of water, they're very wide. Rivers can be super narrow. So since they're so skinny and narrow, all of that water pressure pushing down on that rock below is how the river is able to carve into the rock and eventually form a canyon. In this picture here, as a river flows over flat land, it slowly cuts down into the rock. And like I said, that's due to all of that water pressure. It's able to carve. Over time, the river cuts deeper and deeper into the rocks, making the riverbed's walls steeper. And you can see it pretty well in the picture here that it looks kind of flat onto the rock in this picture. And in this picture, we can see kind of like a wall here where the river is starting to cut into the rock. After millions of years, a deep canyon with very steep walls can form. And then we can see that the walls are steeper than they are in this image here. And that's how the Grand Canyon was formed. How does a canyon such as the Grand Canyon form? Circle the best answer. So in the knowledge that I've already acquired in reading this text, I remembered that the Grand Canyon was formed from the river carving into the rock. So that's what I'm going to look for when I'm reading through all of the answers. A, earthquakes cause rocks to break and form a canyon. We haven't discussed earthquakes at all. Rock layers are put down into places to form a canyon. Okay, that did not happen. It wasn't like somebody just put them there. They had to be created or carved because the rock, yes, was there, but how was it carved to form a canyon? A river carves down into rocks to form a deep canyon. Yes, I just read that on the previous page. Rain and snow cause rocks to dissolve. Dissolve means to break down, to form a canyon. We haven't talked about any rain or snow yet or any types of weather. So this answer is definitely correct because I just read about it on the previous page and up here. You've just learned one way changes to a landscape can occur slowly over time. Keyword slowly, right? This did not happen overnight. It took a while for the Grand Canyon to form. Other forces on Earth can change the land quickly. Look at the image on the next page to find out more. So the water from the Colorado River carved the canyon very slowly over time. There are other ways that Earth's surface can change and rocks can change very quickly. And we're going to read about those ways that the changes can happen quickly now. And our heading here is in the blink of an eye. So that's kind of like a phrase that people use to describe when something happens really quickly. Like you blink your eye and it happens. So in the blink of an eye, these rocks can change overnight. Earthquakes can change the landscape very quickly. In fact, most earthquakes last for less than a minute. Look at the drawings to see what happens to rocks during these events. So earthquakes are something that most of us haven't experienced, but we know what they are. So they happen very quickly. We find that they're hard to predict, and they can quickly change the rock layers. So if you look at the picture here, all of the layers and the lines are, I guess I'll call it like perfect. We can see that the lines extend all the way across. And then in this picture, you can see this breaking point here where it's shifted, so it's moved. So over time, stored energy builds up in rocks. And stored energy is something that we talked about kind of at the beginning of the year in science, that objects have stored energy, and then at any moment that energy could be released. So the rocks have stored energy, and then during an earthquake, rocks move and the stored energy is released. So that's how they're able to move. And then when their layers shift, we cause a change in Earth's surface, and those rocks are no longer where they used to be. Earthquakes happen in many places around the world, but most, about 75%, occur along the edges of the Pacific Ocean. This active area is called the Ring of Fire. Many volcanoes are located there too. The Ring of Fire is a really interesting thing to read about. I'm going to also put another video in the description of the Ring of Fire. There's a really good YouTube video about it that I've showed in class before, and it explains why the Ring of Fire has so many active volcanoes, and it has a lot of earthquakes occurring in the Ring of Fire as well. And sadly, Miss Hillman had such a cool science lab last year where we learned about the Ring of Fire, and I wish that we could do it this year too, because it was really fun, and I remember my students learning a lot. All right, I'm now on page 474. What else can change rock layers? You've learned that rivers can slowly carve rock layers into deep canyons. You've also learned that earthquakes can cause rocks to quickly break. What other things can change the landscape? The layers of rocks in the drawing are under a lot of pressure from each side. Pressure and high temperatures deep below Earth's surface can cause rocks to slowly bend and change. So earthquakes can cause changes, and also just pressure in general due to high temperatures. We don't really think about it all the time, but down below Earth's surface, like deep down, the Earth has many layers leading into its core, and the temperature can be really hot. So if there's temperature changes and higher temperatures, then that can cause the rocks to change. So in the picture, we see two arrows kind of representing pressure, like something pushing inward. And that's why we can see the folds here. It kind of reminds me of a piece of paper. So a piece of paper can be flat, but if you're pushing at it from both ends, it's going to fold, right? So pressure can cause things to bend, and their shape can change. So that's what's happening with this rock here. Temperature and pressure can change rocks. So describe in your own words what is happening to the rock above. In my own words, I mean, the caption pretty much tells me everything that I need to know, that temperature and pressure is changing these rocks. So the rocks are changing. Because of the temperature and pressure. And I have to complete 25. I love fill in the blank questions. Choose the words or phrases to correctly complete each sentence. So, like I said before in my previous videos, I always read through the entire thing and then complete the question. The Grand Canyon formed as a blank, eroded rock layers. The changes happened blank. Earthquakes can change the land also. They can cause rocks to blank. High temperatures and pressures deep within Earth often cause rocks to blank. All right, going back. The Grand Canyon formed as a blank eroded rock layers. What eroded the rock layers to create the Grand Canyon? It was the Colorado River. So I'm going to put river there. The changes happened blank. So that was something I really stressed when reading through that section, is that the changes happened slowly. Not overnight. It took a very long time for the river to be able to carve out all of those layers and create the canyon. Earthquakes change the land also. Earthquakes can cause rocks to break. High temperatures and pressures deep within Earth often cause rocks to bend. And there were two words that we did not use because they're trying to trick us. Changing landscapes. What are some other ways that processes and forces can change the landscape? Look at the images and read the captions to find out. So here are two other ways that the landscape can be changed and the rocks can be changed by other different forces besides water erosion, earthquakes, or heat and pressure. This picture here, you can't really tell too much because it's so dark, but it's kind of forming like an arch, and we can see like cutaway points in the rock. I think this picture is from Arches National Park, which I haven't been to, but my sister has, and she has like a million cool pictures of it. But you can see like there's rock here, and there's rock here, and there's kind of just cutaway points where the rock has been carved. Rock layers can be changed by wind, water, and gravity. Natural bridges, such as this one, form when wind and water break rock into smaller pieces. Gravity causes the loose materials to fall to the ground. Eventually, an arch is carved into the rocks. So this rock was formed over time by maybe like wind or it's like some other forces, like maybe water, if there was like a storm causing some of the pieces to break off. Glaciers are very large masses of ice and snow. Rocks frozen into the sides and bottoms of glaciers can carve deep grooves into the land as the ice slides over it. As a glacier slowly flows across the ground, rock layers can be weathered and eroded to form a canyon. And I'm just thinking back to one of Miss Hillman's science labs again that we completed last year. She had a really cool way to explain how glaciers can form a canyon or a valley. In 26, explained 2 ways in which a glacier can change rock layers. So I'm going back to this caption here because it has all of the information that I need. So I'm just going to go back and read through it again. So explain 2 ways in which a glacier can change rock layers. So I'm using the caption to help me answer this, and I underlined some important information to help me form an answer. I need to make sure that I'm saying 2 ways because that's part of the question, is to state 2 ways in which the glacier can change the rock layers. So I underlined the important information to help me. I'm going to say rocks frozen in a glacier can scratch, and I'm kind of working from here, deep grooves into the rock while the glacier moves. And then as a glacier slowly freezes across the ground, rock layers can be weathered. So as a glacier moves, it can carve a deep canyon. So not only can the rocks frozen within the glacier cause these deep scratches here, but also the glacier itself, as it's moving, can carve away the rock. So those are 2 ways. So one thing I'm seeing here in our packet actually is that 28 is not listed as a question to answer, but it is circled in the packet. So we're going to just answer 28 really quickly and then wrap it up. So we don't have to answer up here. So just in your packet, go to 28. Choose the word or phrase that best completes each sentence. Changes to blank can be slow or fast. Blank can slowly carve canyons into the land. Blank can carve deep grooves into rocks. Rocks deep within earth can be bent by blank.